You can. So, but hey, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So, I want to get into your work. Before we do that, I want to know first and foremost, 4 years ago, we were trying to figure out our way out of this pandemic, the lasting effects and what it was going to do. How did you get through that time period and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Well, by that time I was a coach. I'd sold my law firm with my partner, and so most coaching is online. And team coaching is an art. You really need to do that in person. I'm learning more about it now. I might go into it more, but I'm not a full-fledged team coach just yet. I've taken some courses and stuff like that, but it's very different. It's very different from coaching one-on-one. So it wasn't that hard, except people didn't have quite as much money.
Yeah.
I don't know. I made it through. It wasn't horrible because people were really glad to connect online because they were still going crazy because there was not as much to do.
Yeah.
So they had different issues and different problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so let's get a handle on what you're doing now and what you did before and lost. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students and it's career day. And one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living? How would you explain these parts of your life?"
Both parts, the attorney and the coach.
Yeah.
So as an attorney, I started off being what's called a family lawyer. So if a mommy and daddy, or your parents or someone you knew didn't want to be married anymore, I would represent one of them to help them dissolve their marriage or get divorced. And then I would also help them working with the other attorney to make sure that you, as the kids, were taken care of, that you could see both of your parents. If there was any issues between them about schedules or stuff, they could work that out. Sometimes parents can't work things out, in a marriage. And then the judge has to decide, and there has to be a trial. And that was the kind of lawyer that I was the first part of my career. I probably wouldn't talk to them about representing kids
Yeah.
in in dysfunctional relationships where the parents were drinking, and um I was called a guardian ad litem, and I was called that way. And then after that, I got tired of being around people that were unhappy, because it's pretty unhappy when your parents are going through a divorce or someone and I became a commercial attorney. And basically, I just decided not to do family law anymore. And as a commercial attorney, I help businesses collect their debts. I was in a small office in Lakewood, Ohio. I lived in Cleveland for 13 years. And a person in that office was a businessman who sold like collection packages to businesses so they could collect their debts. I believe that people should be paid for their services.
Sure.
And so he started sending me cases that needed to go to trial, whether they were in Ohio. If they weren't in Ohio, I'm a part of a national organization that so I know attorneys and collection people all over the country. And so I would handle those cases. And I just decided that I was going to this only I have to explain this to third graders.
Yeah.
Um, that is it, you want to keep on going on with this
Oh
because
no, no,
is
you're
it
good. No, no, that's the perfect backdrop. And I'm going to kind of interject, and I find it interesting because I think lawyers, you always have to be kind of a jack of all trades. You have to know a little bit about everything. There's such a broad knowledge base that goes into all of these things, whether you're dealing with family or you're dealing with commercial. So it seems to me as though it's a logical backdrop and foundation for you to be in coaching.
Well, actually, I got my diploma in transfer in mentoring and coaching, and my diploma in transformational holistic counseling while I was still running my law firm.
Okay.
Both of the people I knew they were really competent. They pulled together great courses, and I just felt that the communication and negotiating skills be that I would learn from both would be really helpful as an attorney, and also managing employees and getting along with my teenage son and who was a teenager at the time, and all that kind of stuff. It was really, really helpful. I didn't go through it at first to have a separate business. I just
Gotcha.
thought it would really, yeah.
But it just seems like a logical transfer of knowledge and what could be beneficial in coaching. So take me back to where you were born and raised, and what were these seeds that were planted into you to be as highly driven as you are, and to be somebody that has this capacity to help others get to a better place in their lives?
So I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and my father served in the Korean War, and so I wasn't born for about 3 years after my parents got married because he went to Korea right after they got married. And he was my role model. He was a really cool entrepreneur. My mother wasn't so fussed with it, but I thought it was great. He was like a second generation. His father and his father's brothers went into the movie theater business. And so they owned a bunch of movie theaters in Kentucky and Indiana. And my father was part owner in them too, but he wanted to be his own businessman. And he opened a company called Standard Vendors of Louisville. And he sold popcorn and candy and everything, machines, popcorn machines, any kind of machines to movie theaters and schools. And I thought that was fabulous. So yeah, I worked for him a little bit when I was in high school. I loved to go over there when they were popping popcorn, and he was his own man. He was a really kind boss. It was a small kind of business. Unfortunately, I'm not going to probably put that in there, but it did affect me. When he was 59, all these big, huge movie theater complexes came in and these huge corporations, and he either had to sell out or they were going to put him out of business.
Wow.
So that was really hard for him when he was 59. He wasn't ready to retire, but he didn't want to start. There was really no way for him to compete. So I didn't really understand or get that until I was much older. That wasn't shared with me. But yeah, he was my role model. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom because that's how she made it. Both of her parents worked. She didn't get to see them much, and that was her generation. If you had the money, you did it.
That had to be kind of a glorified childhood to be able to have access to watch the movies and to be right there.
Oh my God, we went to free movies all the time.
Absolutely.
Oh, it was awesome. And my father would bring home these huge big bags of popcorn, like when the popcorn popping day. And so we'd have them in our house and they were freshly popped with butter and salt. It was amazing. Yeah, I loved what my father did.
So everybody would have wanted to be friends with the kid that had the pool on the street, but I would imagine somebody that had access to all of the movies would be even better.
I don't know. We weren't there was a cap on that. We could go to the movie theaters with my
Ah,
dad and get in, but they were my father wasn't the sole owner of these theaters. So you could bring your family, but I couldn't bring all my friends.
I
So
gotcha.
that was never even something that was discussed.
I gotcha. Well, the thing I think about the movie industry right now is that running a movie theater right now would have to be absolutely excruciating. There's not many being put out. There's only a few different genres. It's very expensive for distribution. I just, used to be I mean, and now you can just watch it on your TV if you want to see a release. You have all of the food and everything that you want around you. You can get flat panel TVs. It just seems like this is the time when movie theaters, it would have to be really hard to run one.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't go to the movies hardly
Right.
anymore.
I don't either. Yeah. So, but I just know my stepdaughter goes and I hear stories of how expensive tickets are and expensive everything is. And I'm thinking, man, if you could just rent that, you could rent it cheaper than the price of one ticket. And then you could just get whatever food you want. You'll have it right there. Anyway, it's interesting thinking about that business now versus before. So you've established that your dad was your hero. I'm curious right now in your life and your profession and just in general, if you could meet one person alive on the planet that you find fascinating, spend some time with them, who would it be?
I don't, alive or dead? Do they have to be alive?
It could be a ghost. We could open it up.
I would love to meet Winston Churchill. I
Yeah.
think he was a phenomenal human being, to be able to inspire the world, to stand up against Nazism and, not have England be destroyed and have how he led them, during all those blitzes and went out and talked to people and shook the hands of all the pilots before they went on missions that were going to die and how he is his speaking ability, how he brought the whole world together. I just think he was a phenomenal man. I don't know if the world really appreciates him as much as they, I don't know, should, because he was, I think he really saved us from, the Americans like to say we did it. I am not so sure that that would have
Right.
happened without Winston Churchill.
I think that level of leadership to a good degree is gone. I think that level of decorum and multitasking, I just don't think it exists anymore. And when we look at our political landscape right now and where it's devolved to, it's like it's really hard to fathom that kind of decorum and make it. I mean, I even remember when I was a kid and I can't remember how old I was. I was in grade school when the Challenger exploded in 86. And the speech that Reagan gave that night, and it has no bearing on your political leanings one way or another, but I just remember the eloquence and the way that he comforted everybody, you know? It's like it's just a lost art for a leader to get in front of a microphone and to be able to comfort everybody in that kind of mass way,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Um, so
yeah.
let me ask you this. What is your motivation to do the work that you do, to get up and to coach and to help people get to a better place and to also hold enough back for yourself to evolve as a human? What is that collective gas in your tank every day?
Um, well, first of all, both my parents modeled being of service to others. My father was on some boards of hospitals and other things, and my mother was a volunteer at the crisis center. She got a BA in social work, and so once we were out of the house or not, didn't need much from her. That's what she did. And my brothers and I all, yeah, we just took that on. And I don't know. It's kind of in my blood and my genetics that it's important to give back. And I really love what I'm doing. I mean, as a work-life balance coach, mostly I work with women. And when I went out on my own and opened my little small solo practice as an attorney, I was 29 years old. I opened it up. I had like a paralegal was part-time, in an office with some other attorneys and an employment agency. And I immediately found out I was pregnant. My parents and family were in Louisville, Kentucky, as were my husband at the time. So I didn't have any support. I was like, how the heck am I supposed to get my business off the ground, be a mother, and be all these things? And, I had to build it from scratch. And so I really feel passionate about, especially helping women in that situation. And I don't know all the things when my I got divorced, my son was 3. He developed really bad ADHD. And so I went on a quest to help him to heal and sort of got learned a bunch of healing modalities and helped myself in the process. And all that I learned, all those kind of ways of stepping forward that are like on my little pod match thing, there's more to it than that. You know, I feel it's important to give back because most people don't know how to even like I know how to energetically protect myself,
Yeah.
when I'm out in the world and stuff like that. And it's really important. A lot of people are sensitive and empathic and they're getting mowed over. And it's not just what's happening on the physical, it's like kind of multi-dimensional or whatever. I don't mean to sound woo-woo, but I really enjoy helping people to step forward in a way that they can begin to take care of themselves and so that they can shine more brightly. I just do.
It's interesting you mentioned, my son's 19, he's on the spectrum, and I've been in the special needs community, and I understand because it's a lifelong pursuit. No matter what you do in your life, that's always in the back of your mind. And I think it does open up avenues of awareness, of giving back, of helping, and there's a greater depth. I mean, I think there's a level of our society that's quite shallow with this cash grab and all of this stuff that you're supposed to get as a human being. But at the end of the day, it's really just about having some level of emotional security and feeling good on this planet. When you're around somebody, especially when it's a child, you just feel more indebted to take care of them. And I think that just radiates out.
Yeah. My grandson, my son's son is on the spectrum.
Okay.
So it's really interesting because um it gives him an idea of what it was like, because he wasn't easy to raise. He's doing really great now. He
Yeah.
sort of found his own place, but it took years. And I don't know if my grandson will ever be able to be on his own, but he's getting out, he's getting them out there the same way I got him out there to do fun things,
Yeah.
that it can help him to evolve and grow. So just
I
sort
think
of
that's
go
huge.
with it.
Yeah, I think it's huge for them to see the world. I mean, early on, obviously, therapies are huge. They always say early intervention's the best route. But yeah, to get out and see the world and experience it and find out where their place is and to be social and all of that, I think it's very, very important for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, so what was the first client that you had in the coaching phase of your life, or what was the moment where you knew that you had found your calling, you found your place, and you really wanted to dig in?
It was more, I mean, at the beginning, it was more like I cannot practice law anymore because there's a lot of stress with being a lawyer,
Yeah.
and it's never ever ends. And I was a lawyer for a long time, and I just was like burnt out. And it's like I couldn't leave. without working my butt off a huge amount of time and then coming back and doing the same thing. And I loved coaching. And it just felt like it's time for a change. It just felt like this is what I'm supposed to do. The same way when I decided I've had it with domestic law because I really, I didn't know how to sort of have boundaries and protect myself. And I felt mowed over by the whole system because it felt really toxic. And that's the same kind of decision making. It feels like this is over and I need to step into something new. So that's the feeling of both of them. I was already having doing some coaching. It wasn't like, oh, I just didn't, it was like this airs and it's done and this is what I'm supposed to step into and then let's just see what happens.
I mean, I would imagine if you feel deeply or you're an empath, that being around all of that chaos all the time, there would be no way that you couldn't get sucked into that. Because especially being a lawyer, you have to get into that world to help your clients somewhat, you know? I mean, there's no real way that you can say, I have to put this protection up because you have to enter that world somewhat.
Yeah, and I really didn't know how to have clear and appropriate boundaries and energetic protection back then.
Yeah.
And a lot of the attorneys, especially the women that I saw making it, they were just really, it's like they had this huge, a massive shell around them. You couldn't feel what they were feeling. They just put this whole big thing around them and they didn't connect with their clients. And that didn't seem wise either. So I didn't want to be that way. I just, I started being a divorce lawyer. The first attorney I worked for was a divorce lawyer, and then he also did collection work as well. And um, it was hard to go out on your own. He had a way to handle people, but I don't know. He wasn't empathic or sensitive. I don't know how he did it. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was hard. It was
Yeah.
hard.
So let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into the 18-year-old version of you, and you can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, these careers that you've had, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
To stop looking outside of yourself for love. When I was 18 years old, I was looking outside of myself for love. And and to start finding ways just to fill yourself up with love because that wasn't something that I was really taught. That loving yourself was kind of selfish. You were supposed to be a giver, but if you have an empty cup, how can you do that? And when I was 18 years old, I was definitely looking outside for friends or relationships that were going to fill me up and make me feel whole. And just to let that 18-year-old woman, girl, know that all that stuff was inside of her and maybe help her to get there sooner,
Yeah.
that would have been helpful.
So, of all of these things that you've done and accomplished and evolved into in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Um, Gosh. Well, as bumpy of a road as it was, I'm proud of how I raised my son. I mean, he's 38 years old and he just started being really grateful for me, because anyway, because I was always independent. I always had a business. I did some traveling. I made sure that he was cared for, but he always, I wasn't that stay-at-home mom that he wanted. But I'm just really proud of what I instilled in him because it's made him a lot of the man he is today. I don't think he totally feels it all, but I know it's his own person, but I never thought he was going to graduate from high school, much less college. And
Yeah.
I definitely never thought he was going to have his own business, and he's really successful. And so, yeah, that's probably a pretty big accomplishment. And also, it just feels like I guess the other big thing is that we were always like butting heads in a certain way. And it really feels like within myself, and I can feel it a lot more with him. I've like harmonized everything within me, not everything, most of everything within me when it comes to him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's really cool to have experienced that and not be kind of that bumping heads kind of thing. We're both pretty, people. And so we were just mirrors of each other, you know, but yeah, it's good now.
Sometimes it just takes a long time. It just takes
Yeah.
time for sure. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I think I'm a kind and compassionate person. And I think I'm a person that is really intuitive and empathic and does have a lot of abilities to help people step forward, who are like a few steps behind me, and help them to move forward with their life. And even though I do a lot of things to take care of myself, I make sure I do my yoga and I go hiking in the mountains and all that kind of stuff, and I eat right and I take care of myself. I do give back a lot. So I don't know if that describes the kind of person
Yeah.
I am, but
No, that's a great description. So if anyone out there wants to hire you, reach out, learn more, any of the good business, where's the best place to go?
if you're in the US and Canada, you can contact me by text. That's where you'll get a hold of me the quickest, which is 720-936-2634. You can check me out at my website, jewelconsultancy.com. That's Jewel, like the diamond. My finger, or this one. And I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there under Arlene Cohen Miller. So I'm pretty accessible. If you do a search under Arlene Cohen Miller, I will come up.
Okay, excellent. Arlene, thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Keep doing the wonderful work. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for
Okay,
having me.
thank you.